My name is Carel. I work for BitX. Our job is building Bitcoin infrastructure to make it safe and simple for you to use Bitcoin. And I'd just like to say it's a massive privilege for me to share some knowledge with you tonight about something I'm really excited about, which is cryptocurrencies. Now, I know some of you have questions about cryptocurrencies. What exactly are they? How do they work? What makes them useful? And why are so many smart people going absolutely bananas over them? So hopefully I can answer some of those. I'm going to be talking about Bitcoin because BitX works with Bitcoin. But if you look at Bitcoin and blockchain is a little bit like the internal combustion engine. It's a totally new technology that was invented fairly recently, about 8 years ago. And Bitcoin is only the first commercial application of this, of the blockchain. Since then, many cryptocurrencies started innovating on top of this new technology. So when I talk about Bitcoin, I'm not trying to be exclusive, it's just for the sake of brevity. Okay, so what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin, very simply, is a piece of open source software. If you go on GitHub, you can download it, you can view the source, and that basically provides a set of rules whereby each person that participates in the Bitcoin network plays. So everybody understands all the rules, everybody understands the playbook, everybody's on the same page. And so what makes Bitcoin useful? If you look at sort of the traditional monetary system, up until blockchain was invented, we always needed what we call the trusted third party. Somebody that was sort of like a custodian of the truth, that we could trust, and they would tell us who owns what. And so banks in our society is the trusted third parties, the custodians of who owns what. And if I send 100 Rand to Werner with a bank transfer, then I give an instruction to the bank records that transaction on the ledger. The ledger is just like a log of transactions. And obviously they can write anything on that ledger they want, but we trust them not to write bad stuff on there. So when I send 100 Rand to Werner, they record that transaction. And if I only had 100 Rand and I want to send another 100 Rand out, the bank will say, no, sorry, you don't have any money left. So similarly, cash money, if I have 100 Rand, if I give this to Werner, it kind of feels like it's just me and Werner. But there's somebody else here involved as well. If you look on the note, there's a signature of Gil Marcus. So if Gil Marcus didn't sign that note, if the Reserve Bank didn't assign value to that 100 Rand note, it would just be a piece of paper. It wouldn't be worth anything. So you see, there's always this problem of having a trusted third party. Okay, it's not really a problem. I mean, it's been working really well up until this point. But then at some point, somebody asked, isn't it possible to do money transfer without a trusted third party? What if we had a network of people that participated, and this is a democratic network. So it's voting day today. Hopefully some of you voted. And as you hopefully also know, we live in a democracy, which means that everybody's vote carries the same weight. And so similarly, on the Bitcoin network, every person that participates in the network carries the same weight. There's no higher authority. There's no third party that we need to trust. Everybody's on the same level. Everybody plays by the same rulebook, that open source code I mentioned, and everybody's connected. Why is this special? Why is this cool? Well, what makes this special is that this is peer-to-peer. This is direct. I can send you money without there being a third party involved, like the bank or the Reserve Bank. And that has a lot of advantages. That makes it permissionless, which means I don't have to go to the bank, give my ID document, and before I can start transferring money around, I can just install Bitcoin on my computer, immediately start sending money around. Also, it's transparent. Everybody has a view of what everybody else on the network is doing. So there's a lot of accountability. And basically, it sort of ties in with this whole philosophy of open source and open systems and the internet, permissionless information transfer. In the same way, this is permissionless value transfer. Okay, so how does this work? Everybody's connected. So if I want to send, if I have 1 Bitcoin, assume I have 1 Bitcoin. I'm sending 1 Bitcoin to Robin. Oh, sorry. I forgot to mention the only way that this can work is if everybody has a copy of the ledger. So when the bank records transactions, they have the single ledger. But on the Bitcoin network, there's no single entity recording the ledger. So everybody has a copy of all transactions over all time. If you install the official Bitcoin client, it will sync with the network, and it's a bit like BitTorrent. So those ledgers contain transactions over the past 8 years, and they mostly don't change. So it's easy to sync. And then it's only the last little part when new transactions are coming in, where it's slightly a bit more difficult to synchronize. But I'm going to talk about that now. So just keep in mind, everybody has a full ledger of everybody else's transactions and balances. I'm just going to hide it for now. But just keep in mind it's there. So, okay. If I send 1 Bitcoin to Robin, then because we're connected, it's almost like sending an email. Hey, Robin, I'm sending you 1 Bitcoin. And then that transaction spreads over the network. But it's not instant. It takes a little bit of time. So it's like a ripple spreading over a pond. When you drop a stone in a lake, the ripples will spread over it, but it won't immediately be everywhere. It will take some time to spread. So what I could do if I was evil, so a Bitcoin wallet is a bit like an MP3. It's just a piece of data, and you can copy it. And we all know how happy the music industry is about people copying MP3s. So I can copy my Bitcoin wallet, and with the 1 copy, I can send out a transaction to Robin. And at the exact same moment, I can send out another transaction going to Werner. You see, I'm evil, that's why I'm red. So Werner's transaction spreads over the network, on Werner's side of the network, and Robin's transaction spreads over her side. And where the networks, the 2 parts of the network connect, the nodes, the people on the network, the software is pretty smart. Like, it'll see, hey, Werner's transaction can't be valid because Carel already sent this 1 Bitcoin to Robin. And similarly, on that side of the network, they're not going to accept the transaction that I sent to Robin. So now, as you can see, we've got a problem. Both transactions are valid, but only one can be the truth. So which one is the truth? How can we, the network is divided. So how can we, as a network, without a trusted third party, reach a state of consensus? So consensus, as it says, is an opinion or position reached by a group as a whole. And that's exactly the problem that existed before blockchain was invented. And that's the problem that blockchain solves, is this problem of double spending. It's literally preventing somebody from spending the same money twice, sending the same money to 2 different people. And so the question was, is it possible to solve this in a decentralized way without a bank? The answer is yes. Introducing mining. Mining is a process, and this is the #1 question I get from people, is what is mining? How does it work? Where does Bitcoin come from? So mining is a process. It's also known as transaction verification. It's a means for us to verify which transactions are valid and which are not, and it allows us to reach consensus as a network without a trusted third party. And if you look at the diagram there, it's literally just a process that spits out truth. So it's all about truth. What is the truth? Okay, so now, to get the truth from 8 years worth of transactions is very hard. So we can contain the problem a little bit, make it a little bit smaller, and we can say, let's just look at the last 10 minutes worth of transactions. Okay? If we can sort of bunch up 10 minutes worth of transactions into a block, hint, blockchain, then if we can do that, we can do it for the next 10 minutes, we can do it for the next 10 minutes, and we can chain these blocks of truth together to form a chain of truth, which represents unchangeable history. And that's exactly what the blockchain is. It's a chain of blocks, each worth 10 minutes of truth. Okay, so how do we generate this? How do we generate 10-minute blocks? So we've got a problem. We need to produce a block every 10 minutes. As a network, as a whole, every 10 minutes. And the solution to that is we present a challenge to the network, and this challenge can be made more difficult or less difficult depending on how many people are contributing processing power to the network. But it can be tuned very finely in such a way that it will always take 10 minutes to solve. I'm going to explain how. So if we look at one of these blocks, we zoom in. What does it look like? Okay. At the head there, we've got the head of the block. It points to the previous block in the chain. So there's the blockchain. Okay. That block points to the previous one. Then the body is 10 minutes worth of non-conflicting transactions. So you see I included the transaction I sent to Robin, but not the one to Werner, because then the block would be invalid if it included conflicting transactions. And then in the tail there is a special number. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this special number, but basically its purpose is to prove that this block, or whoever produced this block, solved this 10-minute challenge. So before I can explain how this challenge thing works, you have to understand one concept, a one-way hash. A one-way function, also known as a hash function. Its properties are, if you put something in on the one side, you get something out on the other side. If you put in the same thing again, you get out the same thing again that side. So it's easy to go from there to there, but it's impossible to go from the output back to the input. So as an example, here's a wooden chair factory. You put in a tree, you get out a wooden chair. If you put in a wooden chair, not getting a tree out. If you put in a tree again, you're getting another chair out that side. So it only goes one way. Okay, so let me design an arbitrary one-way function. The properties of the function, I've got an input here. I've designed it so that it outputs a number between 1 and 10. And this is pretty random. Like you can't really predict what the number is going to be before you've calculated the results. You have to put something in, do some work, and I've designed this to take about a minute. And then you get out a number between 1 and 10. So a little bit of maths for this class. If it takes 1 minute to calculate the one-way hash, and you have a 1 in 10 chance to get the number 9, this is our challenge. We want the number 9. How many minutes on average will it take to solve the function? Or to solve? 10 minutes. That's right. Who was that? That guy. That guy gets a T-shirt. Nice. Because you're gonna run through this, and so you've got a pretty even chance of getting any number between 1 and 10. It's like rolling a dice, right? If you roll a dice, what's the odds of getting a 6? It's 1 in 6. So if you roll it 6 times and it takes you a minute to roll it, it's going to take you 6 minutes on average to get a 6. Okay, I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't, you guys are in the wrong place. So, okay. So let's put the block in on the one side, and we put it through our one-way hash function. If you look at the structure of the block, it's mostly static. It always points to the previous block, great. It always contains 10 minutes worth of transactions. It's non-conflicting, great. It's pretty static. So this little tail thing here, we can just start at 0 and increment it. Go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and see what it does to the output. So let's do it. Okay, we start at 0, we get out a 5, and we record it up there. It's not what we want. Put in a 1, we get out a 7. Put in a 2, we get out a 5. 3, 2. Put in a 4, we've got a 9. We've solved the challenge. This block now represents a valid block because it points to the previous one, non-conflicting transactions, and if you take this whole thing as a whole, including the special number, you put it through the one-way hash, you solve the challenge. You get the 9. So on average, it's going to take us 10 minutes to find a valid block. Great. Now you have block, what do you do with it? You publish it, send it out to the network. Okay, so what does this actually look like in practice? If you look at the network, there we've got a miner, and the miner is on Robin's side of the network, so the miner chose the transaction that I sent to Robin as the one that's valid, and it rejected the one I sent to Werner. So this miner takes this block of truth that it produced, it distributes it, same way that all transactions are distributed. And now every single person in this network checks this block of truth for themselves. They check it. Okay, everyone. Does it point to the previous block? Yes. No conflicting transactions, great. Taking the whole thing, it solves the challenge. We get a 9. Awesome. This block is valid. So, because it's valid, we absorb the truth into our own internal state, and we all agree that actually the transaction I sent to Robin is the valid one. So now if you think back about that ledger, everybody's got a copy of all transactions, right? So now the transactions that was in this block gets added onto everybody's ledger. Everybody makes the same entries on the ledger. So everybody again is synchronized. Everybody agrees upon the truth. And then as a special thank you to the miner, finally, this is the weird part. Everybody adds one extra entry in the ledger, which is literally just a transaction saying the miner gets 50 Bitcoins. And everybody does this because it's part of the rules, part of the open source code, the rule book. So the miner specifies his receive address, and everybody makes a single entry, the miner gets 50 Bitcoin. Where does it come from? Nowhere. Everybody agrees the miner got 50 Bitcoins. This is how new Bitcoin is minted. And this is the origin of where Bitcoin actually comes from. So just to summarize. So mining is a process that we use to verify which transactions are valid so that we may reach a state of consensus as a network. And if you look at what it does, it takes in energy or work on this side, does some difficult hashing calculations, it spits out truth on that side that helps us to reach consensus, and then it's rewarded with new coins. And so since we can generate blocks of truth, we can build a blockchain that represents unchangeable history. And this lets us reach a state where we all agree upon what's the truth. This lets us reach a state of consensus. And there, the problem is solved. Thank you, Satoshi.